Velvet Ashes, Dark Romance by Hannelise Basson. Table of Contents. Chapter 1. The Man Who Didn't Leave Footprints. Chapter 2. A Controlled Descent. Chapter 3. The Price of Curiosity. Chapter 4. Things That Don't Add Up. Chapter 5. The Cost of Protection. Chapter 6. What He Was Before Her. Chapter 7. The Silence. He Left Behind. Chapter 8. What Love Costs in the Dark. Chapter 9. The Door That Changed Everything. Chapter 10. Terms of Staying. Chapter 11. The Line That Bleeds. Chapter 12. What Survives the Fire. Chapter 13. The Shape of After. Chapter 14. The Things That Come Back. Chapter 15. What Remains, Velvet Ashes. Chapter 1. The Man Who Didn't Leave Footprints. The first time Alara Moore noticed him, he was standing where people didn't usually stand. Not in line, not seated, not moving. Just there. The cafe was small. Brick walls, sweating heat, mismatched chairs, the kind of place where people came to be seen or to disappear quietly. Alara had worked there long enough to tell which was which. The regulars had patterns. The lonely lingered. The hurried never looked up. This man didn't fit any of them. He stood near the back wall, one hand in his coat pocket, the other resting lightly against the exposed brick as though the room might tilt without his support. He wasn't looking at the menu. He wasn't looking at his phone. His gaze was angled slightly downward, unfocused, as if he were listening to something no one else could hear. He looked expensive, but not loud about it. No logos, no flash, just a coat that fell perfectly across his shoulders, dark hair neatly trimmed but not styled, a watch that caught the light only when he shifted his wrist. The kind of man who didn't need to announce himself because the world already bent a little in his direction. Alara felt the awareness before the interest, the subtle tightening in her chest, the sense of being observed without being seen. She wiped her hands on her apron and approached the counter. "Hi, can I get you something?" He lifted his head. His eyes were dark. Not dramatically so, not the kind of darkness people romanticized. Just deep, focused. As if once he looked at something, he didn't look away easily. "Coffee," he said. His voice was low and controlled, every syllable placed with care. No accent she could identify, no warmth either, but no rudeness. "What kind?" A pause. Brief, calculated. "Black," he said. "No sugar." "Of course." She rang him up, slid the receipt toward him. Their fingers didn't touch, but she still felt the space between them shift, charged, like the moment before a storm broke. "Name?" she asked. Another pause. "Daniel?" It didn't suit him. She wrote it anyway. When she turned to make the coffee, she felt his gaze follow her, not in a way that crawled across her skin, not the lingering appraisal she'd learned to ignore. This was different. He watched like he was cataloging something, filing details away for later. She shouldn't have noticed, but she did. When she handed him the cup, he took it with his left hand. A thin white scar curved across his knuckles, clean and old. Not an accident. Alara had grown up with brothers. She knew the difference. "Thanks," he said. She nodded, already turning away, expecting him to leave. He didn't. He moved to the far corner instead, the seat with its back to the wall, line of sight to the door, partial view of the counter. A defensive position. That's strange, she thought, even as she wiped down the espresso machine. People didn't choose seats like that unless they were military, paranoid, or hiding. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. He didn't drink the coffee. He just sat there, hands folded loosely around the cup, gaze drifting. Not restless, not bored. Waiting. For what, she couldn't say. When the lunch rush hit, she forgot him. Orders piled up. Milk frothed. Plates clattered. Voices rose and overlapped. The cafe filled with heat and noise and the smell of toasted bread. When it finally slowed, she glanced toward the corner again. The seat was empty. The cup was gone. No trace he'd been there at all. He came back 3 days later. Same time, same coat, same stillness. This time, when she wrote Daniel on the cup, she hesitated. "You always order the same thing?" she asked, more curiosity than flirtation. His mouth curved, not quite a smile, more like an acknowledgement. "Habits are efficient." She snorted before she could stop herself. "That sounds depressing." His eyes sharpened, interest flickering like a blade catching light. "Only if you mistake efficiency for emptiness." "Touché." She handed him the coffee. Their fingers brushed this time, barely, but it sent a strange warmth up her arm, quick and unwelcome. He noticed. She could tell by the way his jaw tightened. That unsettled her more than the touch itself. "See you around," she said lightly, turning away. "Probably," he replied. It didn't sound like a guess. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became a constant. He never stayed more than half an hour, never spoke to anyone else, never used his phone. Sometimes he read old hardcover books, worn at the edges. Sometimes he just watched the room with quiet intensity. Sometimes he watched her. Not every moment, not in a way that felt possessive, in a way that felt intentional. Elara told herself she was imagining it. She had a life, a small apartment with creaky floors, a mother who called too often, student loans, a string of failed relationships with men who wanted easy love and uncomplicated futures. She did not have time for mystery men who drank black coffee and looked like secrets. And yet, one rainy afternoon, as she locked up after closing, she saw him across the street. No coat this time, just a dark sweater clinging to a frame leaner than she'd realized. The rain didn't touch him. He stood beneath the awning of a closed jewelry store, watching the cafe as if memorizing it, as if memorizing her. Her heart stuttered. She stepped back inside, pulse racing, mind scrambling for explanations. "Coincidence. You're tired. Stop romanticizing strangers." When she looked again, he was gone. The night he finally spoke to her outside the cafe, she was already on edge. The street was nearly empty. Rain-slicked pavement reflected the city lights in fractured colors. Elara hugged her coat closer, keys clenched between her fingers. "Elara." She froze. No one ever said her name like that. Soft, certain. She turned slowly. Daniel stood a few feet away, hands visible, posture relaxed, but alert. He looked different, less contained, like something had slipped its leash. "You shouldn't walk home alone this late," he said. Her fear spiked, sharp and immediate. "That's not really your concern." A flicker crossed his face. Regret, maybe. Or something darker. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." He should have left it there. Instead, he added, "But someone followed you from the bus stop." Her breath caught. "What?" "Blue jacket, limp in the right leg, stayed 3 meters back." His eyes scanned the street, calculating. "He turned off when he realized I was watching." "You—" She swallowed. "You followed me?" "Yes." The honesty was worse than a lie. "Why?" she demanded. He hesitated, and in that hesitation she sensed the truth was dangerous. "Because," he said quietly, "I would have intervened if he didn't." Silence pressed in around them, thick and electric. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough," he replied. That should have terrified her. Instead, something in her chest softened, against all logic. "Daniel," she said carefully, "if you ever do that again without telling me, I'll call the police." A corner of his mouth lifted. "Fair." He stepped back, creating distance. "For what it's worth," he added, "I don't follow people without reason." "And what's your reason?" she asked. His gaze met hers, steady, unflinching. "You," he said. Then he turned and walked away, footsteps fading into the wet night. Alara stood there long after he was gone, heart pounding, intuition screaming two contradictory truths at once. This man was dangerous, and walking away from him might be the biggest mistake of her life. Chapter 2. A Controlled Descent. Daniel never walked the same route twice. Patterns were liabilities. Habits got people hurt. Tonight, he took the long way, 3 unnecessary turns, a narrow alley that smelled like rust and rain, then out onto a main road humming with late traffic. He checked reflections in windows, the angle of shadows, the rhythm of footsteps behind him. Nothing. Good. Only then did he allow himself to think about her. That was the mistake. Alara Moore had not been part of the plan. He didn't have plans that included people like her, women who laughed without armor, who looked others in the eye without calculation, who didn't recognize danger even when it brushed against their sleeve. She was a risk, and Daniel was meticulous about eliminating risks. Yet her name echoed in his mind with irritating persistence, the way she'd said his, Daniel, as if it were temporary, as if she sensed it wasn't the whole truth. He reached his car, a black luxury sedan parked beneath a flickering streetlight. Anonymous, unremarkable, exactly how he preferred it. As he slid into the driver's seat, his phone lit up. Caller, M. Hale. He stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Report, he said. She's clean, Hale replied without preamble. No criminal record. No family connections to our existing operations. Student debt, service job, quiet life. Exactly what you suspected. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. Exactly what he'd hoped she wouldn't be. And the follower? Daniel asked. Known petty offender. Escalating pattern. You intervening would have been justified. I didn't, Daniel said. I know. You rarely hesitate unless something's changed. Silence stretched between them. Has it? Hale asked carefully. Daniel ended the call. He rested his head against the seat, breath slow, controlled. He had spent years mastering this: containment, discipline, distance. Emotion was a tool at best, a weakness at worst. And yet, he saw her again, rain-dark hair curling at her temples, keys clenched between her fingers like claws, fear flaring into anger when he'd crossed a line. If you ever do that again without telling me, I'll call the police. He'd almost smiled, not because it amused him, because it relieved him. Most people bent around him once they sensed his gravity. They softened, adjusted, offered themselves unconsciously. Alara had pushed back. That made her dangerous in a different way. The penthouse was silent when Daniel entered, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking a city that glittered like it belonged to him. In a sense, parts of it did. Investments, leverage, ownership disguised as opportunity. He poured himself a drink he didn't want and stood by the window, watching traffic crawl like veins of light. He hadn't intended to speak to her that night. He'd told himself he was only watching for threats, that he was protecting an asset he hadn't yet decided to discard. That was a lie. He'd wanted her to know. Not the truth, not yet, but his presence, to shift something in her world, to mark the edge of it. That, he realized grimly, was how it always began. Alara didn't sleep. She lay on her side staring at the shadowed ceiling of her apartment, listening to the radiator click and groan like it was thinking too hard. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel standing under the awning, rain blurring the city around him, gaze steady and unreadable. Because you. It was absurd, arrogant, vaguely terrifying, and it had threaded itself into her bones. She told herself she was reacting to fear, to adrenaline, to the delayed shock of realizing someone had been watching her without her consent. But fear didn't explain the pull, or the disappointment she felt when he didn't come into the cafe the next morning, or the way her pulse jumped when the door finally opened that afternoon and he stepped inside like he'd never left. Same coat, same calm, different eyes. They looked heavier. She took his order without comment, sliding the cup across the counter. Black, she said. No sugar. Yes. Their fingers brushed again. This time neither of them moved away immediately. You scared me, she said quietly, not meeting his gaze. I know. You don't get to decide what's good for me. I won't, he said. Then, after a beat, unless you ask. That surprised her enough to make her look up. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, he said honestly. It's supposed to be true. She studied him, the clean lines of his face, the faint shadow beneath his eyes, the careful neutrality of his posture. He looked like a man who held himself together by force of will alone. Why are you really here? She asked. His gaze flicked to the door, the windows, the rest of the cafe, then back to her. Because I enjoy this place, he said. That's not an answer. A corner of his mouth twitched. Because I enjoy you. Her stomach flipped, equal parts heat and alarm. That's worse. Yes, he agreed. A silence stretched between them, dense with things unsaid. Coffee's on the house, she said finally, sliding the cup toward him. His eyes darkened. I don't take charity. Then consider it a peace offering. For what? For not calling the police. He exhaled softly. Thank you. He moved to his usual seat but didn't open a book, didn't watch the door. He watched her instead, not constantly but openly now, like he'd decided secrecy was no longer useful. When his phone buzzed, he ignored it. When another message followed, he didn't. He stood, crossed the room, and stopped at the counter again. Ilara, he said, low enough that only she could hear. Have dinner with me. She laughed, short, incredulous. Absolutely not. I'll pick the place, he continued. Public. Early. You can leave whenever you want. No. I won't follow you again. That's not... And, he added quietly, I'll answer one question. Anyone you choose. Her breath caught. That was the hook, and they both knew it. She should have said no. Instead, she heard herself say, tomorrow, 1 hour. His eyes softened, not with relief, but with something more dangerous. Satisfaction tempered by restraint. I'll be there, he said. As he turned to leave, Ilara felt it then, the unmistakable sensation of a door closing behind her. Not slammed, not locked, just gently shut. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she didn't reach for the handle. Chapter 3. The Price of Curiosity. The restaurant Daniel chose didn't have a sign. Ilara noticed that immediately. No glowing letters, no chalkboard menu on the sidewalk, just a narrow door set into stone, a single light above it casting a soft, deliberate glow. The kind of place you only found if you already knew it existed. She hesitated across the street, fingers tightening around her phone. 1 hour, she reminded herself. Public place. I can leave? Still, when she crossed and pushed open the door, a quiet settled over her shoulders like a weight. Inside, the air smelled of citrus and smoke. Low music hummed beneath murmured conversation. Every table was occupied, yet the room felt spacious, intentionally so. She realized with a faint prickle of unease that the patrons all looked comfortable, confident, like they belonged to a world that rarely worried about rent or bus schedules. And then she saw him. Daniel rose the moment he noticed her, not hurried, not performative, just precise. You came, he said. I said I would. He smiled at that, small, genuine, fleeting. It unsettled her more than his earlier intensity. A server appeared as if summoned by thought alone, and guided them to a table tucked into a shadowed corner. Not isolated, but protected. Daniel waited until Ilara sat before taking his seat across from her. She took in the details she'd missed before. The cufflinks understated but immaculate, the faint scent of something dark and clean, cedar maybe, control wrapped around him like a second skin. This place is fancy, she said, immediately regretting how small the word sounded. It's quiet, he corrected. I thought you'd prefer that. You thought wrong, she said lightly. I like noise, Makes it harder to think. His gaze sharpened. You think too much? I've been told. The server returned, already holding menus, but Daniel shook his head. The tasting menu, he said. For both of us. Alara's eyebrows rose. You didn't ask. I know. She studied him. You do that a lot. Yes. Why? Because people usually let me. There it was again. That honesty that felt less like vulnerability and more like a warning label. And if I don't? She asked. His eyes held hers. Then I adapt. Something about the way he said it made her believe him completely. The server left. Wine appeared without being ordered. Alara watched the deep red liquid settle into her glass. I'm not impressed by money, she said, suddenly defensive. I didn't bring you here to impress you. Then why did you? He leaned back slightly, fingers resting loosely against the table. Because you asked for honesty. That was my question, she said. Not my invitation. And yet you accepted. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Annoyingly, he was right. So, she said instead, my question. He didn't pretend not to understand. His gaze dropped briefly to the table, then lifted again. What do you want to know? He asked. She hesitated. A dozen questions fought for dominance. Who are you? Why me? What aren't you telling me? In the end, she chose the one that mattered most. Why do you look at me like you're afraid I'll disappear? The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend. Daniel didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was lower, less controlled. Because people usually do, he said. The first course arrived, breaking the moment, but the tension remained, humming beneath the surface. You're wealthy, she said after a while. I can tell. Yes. You don't talk about work. No. You watch exits. Yes. She tilted her head. You ever consider how alarming that is? All the time. That made her laugh despite herself. The food was incredible. She hated that it was. Hated that he was right about the tasting menu. Hated that she was relaxing, laughing even, while part of her mind screamed that this was a bad idea. So what do you do? She asked. He met her gaze. I manage risk. She snorted. That's vague. It's accurate. For who? For people who can afford to avoid consequences. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. That sounds ominous. It is. She studied him carefully now. Do you ever lie? Yes. The answer came too easily. Are you lying right now? No. She believed him. That scared her more than if she hadn't. The hour passed too quickly. When Daniel glanced at his watch, Alara felt a flicker of disappointment she hadn't prepared for. 1 hour, she said. I said 1. I remember. They stood together near the door, close enough that she could feel his warmth. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her space. That restraint felt intentional. Outside, the night was cooler, quieter. I had a good time, she admitted. So did I. A pause. This doesn't mean, she began. I know, he said gently. I won't assume. He hesitated, then added, but I would like to see you again. She should have set boundaries, should have slowed this down. Instead, she said, we'll see. His smile returned, soft, dangerous. As she turned to leave, he spoke again. Alara, she looked back. If you ever feel unsafe, he said quietly, you call me. That sounds like a promise I didn't ask for. I know, he said. It's still mine to keep. She walked away without responding, heart racing. From the doorway, Daniel watched until she disappeared into the crowd. Only then did his phone buzz again. Unknown caller. He answered. They're moving, the voice on the other end said. Your involvement is being noticed. Daniel's gaze darkened. Good, he replied. Then he ended the call and slipped the phone into his pocket, already calculating what it would cost to protect the one thing he hadn't meant to claim. Because Alara Moore was no longer just a curiosity, she was a liability. And he had never lost one yet. Chapter 4. Things that don't add up. Alara told herself she wasn't looking for him. She repeated it like a mantra as she wiped down tables, as she restocked cups, as she glanced at the door every time the bell chimed. The cafe felt louder than usual, brighter, like someone had turned up the contrast on her life without asking permission. He didn't come. Not that day, not the next. The absence irritated her more than his presence ever had. She hated that. On the third day, she finally admitted the truth while standing alone in her apartment kitchen, laptop open, cold tea forgotten on the counter. She typed his name into the search bar. Daniel. Too common. She added the cafe's location, then his rough age, then words that felt ridiculous even as she typed them. Wealthy, private, risk management. Nothing useful surfaced. No social media, no professional profile, no articles, no interviews, no careless digital footprint. It was as if he'd stepped out of a pocket of the world that didn't require being documented. That should have reassured her. Instead, it made her skin prickle. People didn't disappear online by accident anymore. She closed the laptop, annoyed with herself. He'd been clear. One question, answered. No promises beyond that. Whatever this was, it wasn't a mystery to be solved. It was a flirtation with teeth, and she'd agreed to it with open eyes. Mostly. The bell above the cafe door chimed. Her head snapped up before she could stop herself. Daniel stood just inside, rain darkening his coat. Expression unreadable. Relief hit her first. Anger followed close behind. "You vanished," she said when he reached the counter. "I was occupied." "That's it?" she asked. "No warning?" "I didn't think you'd want one," she scoffed. "You don't get to decide what I want." A familiar smile tugged at his mouth. "You've said that before." "And you still don't listen." "I do," he said quietly. "I just don't always comply." That should have ended the conversation. Instead, she handed him his coffee without asking. "Sit," she said. "You owe me 5 minutes." His eyebrow lifted. "Only 5? Don't push it." He moved to the corner seat, but this time, when she joined him on her break, the air between them felt different. He was sharper, more alert, like something had shifted just out of sight. "You're distracted," she said. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you looked for me." Her breath caught. "What?" "You searched," he said calmly. "Online, quietly, with increasing frustration." "That's not a criticism," he interrupted. "An observation." A chill slid down her spine. "How would you know that?" "Because," he said, lowering his voice, "people don't go looking for ghosts unless they've already felt haunted." She stood abruptly. This was a mistake. He didn't move, didn't reach for her. "Alara," he said, steady as stone. "Sit down." The authority in his voice made her hesitate before she could stop herself. She hated that she listened. "I won't lie to you," he continued, "but I can't tell you everything. Not yet." "Then tell me something," she snapped, "because right now you feel like a beautifully dressed warning sign." His gaze softened at that. "That might be the most accurate description I've ever received." Silence stretched. "I manage private security," he said finally, "for people whose problems don't stay contained." "That still sounds vague." "It's meant to." "Are you dangerous?" A pause. "I'm capable," he said. "There's a difference." She searched his face for deception and found none. Only restraint. "And the people who work for you?" she asked. "They're loyal." "Because they're afraid?" "Because I keep them alive." That landed heavier than he intended. She could tell by the flicker in his eyes. Before she could respond, the cafe door opened again. A man entered. Alara noticed him immediately, tall, broad-shouldered, hair cut too neatly to be casual. He scanned the room once, quickly, like he was confirming something. Daniel's body went still. Not tense, ready. The man approached their table. "Daniel Hale," he said pleasantly. "We should talk." Ilara's heart stuttered. Hale. Daniel didn't correct him. "This isn't the place," Daniel replied coolly. "It's the perfect place," the man said, glancing briefly at Ilara. "Public. Witnesses." Daniel stood. "Ilara," he said quietly, "go back to work." "I'm not. Please." Something in his tone made her obey. From behind the counter, she watched them speak in low voices, watched Daniel's jaw tighten, watched the other man smile like he already knew the ending of the story. When Daniel returned, his expression was carefully neutral. "I have to leave," he said. "Who was that?" she demanded. "A complication." "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting today." She crossed her arms. "Then maybe this ends here." His gaze lingered on her face, something like regret flickering beneath the surface. "If this ends," he said softly, "it won't be because I walked away." Then he was gone. That night, Ilara dreamed of locked doors and velvet-lined rooms, of hands that never touched her skin but controlled the air she breathed. She woke just before dawn to the sound of her phone vibrating. Unknown number. She stared at it, heart pounding, before answering. "Ilara Moore," a man's voice said smoothly. "You don't know me, but you should." She sat up. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important," he replied. "What is important is that you stop seeing Daniel Hale." Her blood ran cold. "Why?" she whispered. "Because," he said, voice dark with amusement, "men like him don't fall in love." The line went dead. Ilara sat there shaking, one truth settling heavily in her chest. Daniel hadn't been hiding from the world. He'd been hiding her. Chapter 5. The Cost of Protection. Ilara didn't go to work the next day. She called in sick with a voice that didn't quite sound like her own, then sat on the edge of her bed for nearly an hour, phone clutched in her hand, replaying the call again and again. Men like him don't fall in love. The man hadn't threatened her. Not directly. He hadn't needed to. The message had been surgical, precise enough to leave damage without blood. She paced her apartment, checking locks she'd never questioned before. The windows, the fire escape, the hallway outside her door. Everything looked the same, which somehow made it worse. By noon, the fear hardened into anger. She dialed Daniel's number before she could talk herself out of it. It rang once. "Where are you?" she demanded the moment he answered. "Safe," he replied. No greeting, no surprise. "Are you?" "I got a call." Silence. Then, carefully, "From whom?" "You know exactly who," she snapped. "Someone who knows your real name. Someone who thinks he gets to warn me away from you like I'm disposable." Her voice shook despite her effort to steady it. "Come over," Daniel said. "No." "Ilara." "I'm not walking into your fortress so you can manage me," she said. "If you want to explain yourself, you do it here." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'll be there in 10 minutes, he said. "That's not what I—" The line went dead. Daniel arrived in 8. He didn't knock. She opened the door to find him already standing there, coat discarded, sleeves rolled up, jaw tight with barely restrained fury. He looked less polished like this, more real, more dangerous. "You crossed a line," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "And so did he." "You put a target on my back." "No," Daniel said quietly. He noticed what was already there. Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him, "that the moment I cared, you were no longer invisible." "That's not romantic," she said. "That's terrifying." "It's both," he replied. She paced the small living room, anger buzzing under her skin. "You don't get to decide that loving you is worth this." "I haven't," he said. I'm trying to decide whether it's worth losing you to keep you safe." That stopped her cold. "What did you do?" she asked. His gaze dropped briefly, just long enough to tell her the truth would hurt. "I removed his access," Daniel said. "He won't contact you again." A chill crept up her spine. "Removed how?" "Professionally." "Daniel." "He underestimated me," Daniel said. "That was his mistake." She swallowed. "Did you hurt him?" "Yes." The word landed like a blow. "How badly?" she whispered. He met her eyes. "Enough." Alara sank onto the couch, heart racing. She'd known that there was violence in him. She'd felt it, coiled and contained, but hearing it stated so plainly shattered the illusion that she could dance around the truth. "You said you managed risk," she said hollowly. "I do," he replied. "I just don't outsource it when it matters." "This isn't protection," she said. "It's control." He knelt in front of her, careful not to touch her. His voice dropped, rawer now. "I didn't choose this," he said. "I didn't choose to feel anything for you. But once I did, I refused to let someone else decide what it would cost." She searched his face, seeing the conflict etched there, the restraint, the discipline, the barely leashed brutality. "You're not safe," she said. "No," he agreed. "But I am honest." She laughed weakly. "That's supposed to help?" "It's all I have." Silence wrapped around them. "Leave," she said finally. His jaw tightened. "Ilara." "Leave," she repeated. "Before I stop being afraid of you." That hurt him. She saw it. He stood slowly, nodding once. "If you need me." "I know," she cut in. "You'll come whether I ask or not." A ghost of a smile flickered across his mouth. Then he turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind him. Daniel didn't go home. He went underground. By nightfall, 6 secure lines lit up, men and women who trusted him because he never asked for loyalty without earning it. "She's off limits," Daniel said into the darkness of his car. "Anyone who watches her answers to me." "And you?" Hale asked quietly. "What if you're the threat?" Daniel's grip tightened on the wheel. "Then I'll remove myself," he said. Hale didn't reply. Alara didn't sleep again that night. Fear warred with something worse, longing. Because beneath the danger, beneath the control and the violence, she'd seen something in Daniel's eyes that unsettled her more than any threat. Not possession, devotion. And devotion, she was beginning to realize, could be far more dangerous than hate. Chapter 6. What he was before her. Alara lasted 6 days. 6 days of silence. 6 days of jumping at shadows, of scanning faces on the street, of hating herself for missing a man she knew she shouldn't want. Daniel didn't call, didn't text, didn't appear outside her building like a ghost with unfinished business. That frightened her more than if he had. By the 7th day, the cafe felt unbearable, too open, too exposed. Every customer looked like a question she didn't know how to answer. She was closing early when it happened. The lights flickered. Once, twice, then the bell above the door rang. Ilara's heart slammed against her ribs. It wasn't Daniel. The man who stepped inside was younger than she expected, early 30s maybe, clean-cut, well-dressed, but his eyes were sharp in a way that didn't match the softness of his smile. "Ilara Moore," he said pleasantly. "We need to talk." Her hand slid beneath the counter toward her phone. "The cafe's closed." "Yes," he agreed. "That's why I came." Fear snapped into place, cold and precise. "I'm calling the police." "I wouldn't," he said gently. "They won't arrive before this conversation ends." Her fingers froze. "Who are you?" she demanded. "My name doesn't matter," he replied. "What matters is that you walked away from Daniel Hale." She swallowed. "I didn't walk toward you." "No," he agreed. "You walked toward freedom." Something about the word made her skin crawl. "You should leave," she said. Instead, he took a slow step closer. Do you know what Daniel was before he became what he is now? The man asked. Before the money, before the polish. I don't care, she said, even as her pulse screamed otherwise. You should, he continued calmly, because people like him don't change. They just refine. She reached for the door behind the counter. That's when the man sighed. I really hoped he'd let this go, he said, but Daniel has always struggled with boundaries. The door behind her slammed shut. Not by him, by someone else. Daniel stood there. No coat, no restraint. His presence filled the room like a storm breaking through glass. The man smiled. Speak of the devil. Get away from her, Daniel said. His voice was flat, empty. The man raised his hands. I was just explaining consequences. You were provoking, Daniel replied. That's different. Alara's breath shook. Daniel... Stay behind me, he said without looking at her. She obeyed instinctively. The man tilted his head. You're slipping, Hale. You used to be cleaner. Daniel stepped forward. The movement was smooth, economical, and terrifying. In less than a second, he had the man pinned against a table, arm twisted at an angle that made Alara gasp. Say her name again, Daniel said quietly, and I will end you. The man groaned, smile gone. This is who you are, he rasped. This is what she'll see. Daniel hesitated, just long enough. The man wrenched free, stumbled back, clutching his arm. Ask him, the man said to Alara, eyes wild now. Ask him what he did in Prague. Ask him how many people never made it home. Daniel froze. The silence that followed was deafening. Alara's voice came out hoarse. Daniel? He turned slowly. The look in his eyes wasn't anger. It was shame. I was hired, he said quietly, to dismantle a criminal network that the law couldn't touch. That's not what he asked, she whispered. There was collateral damage, Daniel continued. I minimized it. How many? She asked. His jaw tightened. Enough, he said. The word felt heavier this time. The man laughed shakily. See? Still the same answer. Daniel took a step back, creating space. For her, not himself. I told you I was capable, he said. I didn't tell you what that meant. Alara felt something inside her fracture, not completely, but enough that she knew it would never go back to how it was. You kill people, she said. Yes, Daniel replied. The honesty burned. Not casually, he added. Not without cause, but yes. The man edged toward the door. I'll let you two talk. Daniel didn't stop him. The door slammed shut behind the stranger, leaving only silence and the echo of truth. Alara wrapped her arms around herself. Why tell me now? Because you were going to find out, Daniel said, and because if you walk away, I need it to be informed. Tears burned her eyes. You said you'd remove yourself if you were the threat. I am, he said, and I haven't. Why? His voice broke, just barely. Because losing you would finish what my past started. She stared at him, heart in pieces. You don't get to decide that, she said again, weaker now. I know, he whispered, but I'm still here. She turned away. I need time, she said. If I stay, I lose myself. If I leave, I don't know who I become. Daniel nodded once. I'll give you space, he said. Real space, no shadows. She didn't answer. As he walked out, Alara realized the truth she'd been avoiding. Daniel wasn't the darkness chasing her. He was the darkness holding the line. And she didn't know whether to fear the monsters outside his reach or the one standing between her and them. Chapter 7. The silence he left behind. Daniel vanished the way only men like him could. No messages, no sightings, no quiet presence at the edge of her days. Alara waited for it to feel like relief. It didn't. Instead, the world felt louder, sharper, Exposed. The first week passed in a haze. She went to work, smiled at customers, counted change, walked home with her keys threaded between her fingers like talons, heart hammering at every unexpected sound. No one followed her. That was the problem. Daniel had been wrong about many things, but not about visibility. Without him, she felt suddenly, painfully seen, like the city had noticed her absence from his shadow and adjusted accordingly. The second week was worse. Her apartment door was unlocked when she came home one night. Not forced, not damaged, just unlocked. Nothing was missing, nothing disturbed. Someone had been there long enough to be careful. She sat on the edge of her bed for an hour, staring at the wall, fighting the urge to call him. He said space, she reminded herself. Real space. The third week, the cafe manager pulled her aside. "Someone's been asking about you," he said. Her stomach dropped. "Who?" He shrugged. Didn't give a name. Polite. Well-dressed. Said he was an old friend. Daniel's voice echoed in her mind. People don't go looking for ghosts unless they've already felt haunted. She finished her shift with shaking hands. That night, she stood in her kitchen at midnight, phone in hand, thumb hovering over Daniel's contact. She hadn't deleted it. She told herself it was practicality. It was a lie. Before she could decide, the phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart slammed. She answered. "Hello?" "Elara Moore," a woman's voice said. Calm, professional. "My name is Mara Hale." Hale. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. "I'm Daniel's sister," Mara continued. "And before you say anything, no, he didn't tell me to call you." Elara swallowed. "Then why are you calling?" "Because he disappeared," Mara said. "And you're the reason." They met the next morning. Mara Hale was nothing like Daniel. She smiled easily, dressed sharply, met Elara's gaze without hesitation or calculation. If Daniel was shadow and restraint, Mara was steel wrapped in silk. "You don't look like his type," Mara said after a moment. Elara blinked. "Excuse me?" "I mean that as a compliment," Mara added. "He usually gravitates toward people who won't ask questions." Elara folded her hands together. "I didn't ask to be involved." "No," Mara agreed. "But Daniel doesn't stumble. He chooses." That sent a shiver through her. "What does disappeared mean?" Elara asked. Mara sighed. "It means he shut down every operation, cut contact with every associate, and walked away from a network that doesn't allow exits." "Because of me." "Yes." Elara's chest tightened painfully. "I didn't want that." "I know," Mara said gently. "That's why I'm here." She leaned forward. "Daniel is trying to become someone who deserves you. The problem is, he doesn't know how to do that without destroying himself." Tears burned Elara's eyes. "He's a killer." "Yes," Mara said without flinching. "And he's also the reason I'm alive." Elara stared at her. "He pulled me out of a life that would have ended badly," Mara continued. "Not by force, by refusing to let the worst parts of himself define what he protected." She hesitated. "You make him want to try again." "That's not my responsibility," Elara whispered. "No," Mara agreed. "But it is your choice." Elara shook her head. "He scares me." Mara's expression softened. "He should, but he's never scared you." Silence settled between them. "Where is he?" Elara asked finally. Mara smiled faintly. "If you were in danger, he'd be closer than your own shadow." That didn't reassure her. That night, Elara dreamed of Prague. She didn't know how she knew it was Prague, only that the streets were narrow and wet, the air thick with smoke and echoes. She dreamed of Daniel standing at the end of an alley, blood on his hands, eyes hollow and searching. "I tried to be better," he said. She woke with tears on her face, and a sound at her door. 3 soft knocks. Not urgent, not threatening, controlled. Her heart raced as she moved quietly across the apartment. "Elara," Daniel's voice said through the door, "I need you to open this." Her hand hovered over the lock. "You said space," she whispered. "I said I'd give it," he replied. "I didn't say the world would." "What's wrong?" she asked. A pause. "Everything," he said, "and you're in danger." She closed her eyes and opened the door. Chapter 8. What Love Costs in the Dark. Daniel looked thinner. Not weak, never that, but worn in a way Alara hadn't seen before. The sharp precision of him was still there, but the polish was gone, stripped away by sleepless nights and decisions that couldn't be undone. "You shouldn't be here," she said, even as she stepped aside to let him in. "I know." He moved through the apartment like he remembered every corner, stopping only once the door was locked behind him. "They found me," he said. Her chest tightened. "Who?" "Everyone I walked away from," he replied, "and someone I underestimated." "Because of me. Because of my choices," he corrected. "You were just the catalyst." She crossed her arms. "That's supposed to make me feel better?" "No," he said quietly. "It's supposed to make you stay honest with yourself." She studied him. "Mara told me you disappeared." His jaw tightened. "She shouldn't have involved you." "She didn't," Alara said. "She trusted me." He looked at her then, really looked, and something like relief flickered across his face. "They're testing boundaries," he continued. "Unlocked doors, questions at your work, warnings that don't leave marks." Her blood ran cold. "You knew." "Yes." "And you didn't stop it?" "I wanted to see who was willing to cross the line," he said. "Now I know." "That's not comforting, Daniel. It's necessary." She exhaled shakily. "What happens now?" "Now," he said, "you disappear." Her eyes flashed. "Absolutely not. Alara, you don't get to erase me because your past caught up with you," she snapped. "I won't become another thing you control." He flinched. "Then listen to me," he said, voice low and urgent. "I don't want to control you. I want to protect you. There is a difference, even if I've failed to show it. You said you'd remove yourself if you were the threat." "I tried," he said. "They made sure you felt the consequences." Silence thickened between them. "You're asking me to trust you," she said finally. "After everything?" "Yes." "And what are you offering in return?" He didn't answer right away. "Transparency," he said at last. "Boundaries. And a choice." She tilted her head. "Those sound like words." "Then let me make them real," he said. He reached into his pocket slowly and placed his phone on the table between them. "You want names?" he said. "You want locations, accounts, the truth about Prague, about who I worked for and why I left?" Her breath caught. "You'd give me that?" "Yes," he said, "because if you stay, you don't stay blind." She stared at the phone, heart pounding. "And if I don't?" she asked. "Then I disappear for good," he said, "and I let the world believe I never existed." The weight of that settled heavily. "You love me," she said softly. He didn't hesitate. "Yes." The simplicity of it broke something open in her chest. "And you're afraid," she added. "Yes." She swallowed. "So am I." He nodded. "As you should be." A faint, almost hysterical laugh escaped her. "God, we're a mess." "Yes," he agreed. "But we're an honest one." She picked up the phone. Not to unlock it, to slide it back to him. "No," she said. "Not like this." He frowned. "Alara, if I stay," she continued, voice steady despite the fear roaring inside her, "it's not because you handed me a dossier and scared me into compliance. It's because you stand beside me in daylight and let me choose you anyway." Something in his eyes shattered and reformed. "That's significantly more dangerous," he said. She smiled faintly. "For both of us." A sound outside made them both go still. Footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. Daniel moved instantly, positioning himself between Alara and the door, But this time he didn't push her back. He kept her at his side. "They're here," he said softly. Her heart raced. "What do we do?" He met her gaze. "We don't run." A knock sounded. Not gentle, not violent, certain. "Elara Moore," a man's voice called. "Open the door." Daniel's hand brushed hers, not restraining, just present. "You still have a choice," he murmured. She tightened her grip on his fingers. "I know," she said. And for the first time since this began, she didn't feel like she was standing on the edge of something she didn't understand. She felt like she was stepping into it. Together. Chapter 9. The Door That Changed Everything. Daniel didn't move toward the door. That was the first thing Elara noticed. Every instinct she'd seen in him before, deflect, intercept, dominate, was held in check. He stood beside her, not in front of her, his presence steady and deliberate. Another knock came, louder. "Elara Moore," the voice repeated. "We can do this the easy way." Daniel leaned close, his voice barely a breath. "If I say run, you run." She shook her head. "No more disappearing." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. She stepped forward and unlocked the door. The man outside was older than she expected, late 40s, gray at the temples. His suit was immaculate, his smile polite in a way that never reached his eyes. "Ms. Moore," he said. "Thank you." "You're trespassing," she replied, surprising herself with how steady she sounded. "Technically," he said mildly, "I'm having a conversation." His gaze slid to Daniel. "Mr. Hale," he said, "you look diminished." Daniel said nothing. The man sighed. "I hoped you'd have the sense to leave her out of this." "You put her in it," Daniel replied coldly. "No," the man said. "You did. You don't get to keep beautiful things without paying for them." Elara felt Daniel go rigid beside her. "She's not a thing," Daniel said. "Everything is," the man replied. "Especially leverage." Elara stepped forward again, forcing the man's attention back to her. "You came to threaten me," she said. "So do it properly." Daniel turned sharply. "Elara?" She lifted a hand. "No, let him speak." The man smiled, impressed despite himself. "Very well," he said. "Daniel belongs to a system, one that doesn't forgive abandonment. His exit cost people money, influence, lives." "You're criminals," Elara said flatly. He chuckled. "We're realists." "You killed people," she shot back. "And you're here pretending this is about loyalty?" The smile faded slightly. "You're sharper than he deserves," the man said, "which is unfortunate." Daniel shifted then, subtle, lethal. "This ends now," he said. "You leave. You never contact her again." The man shook his head. "You still think you're negotiating?" He leaned closer to Elara. "Ms. Moore, Daniel has enemies who are far less patient than I am. Walk away now, and you'll live a quiet life. Stay, and you'll become a lesson." Something inside Elara went very still. "You don't know him," she said. The man laughed. "I helped make him." She met his gaze without flinching. "Then you failed." The man's eyes hardened. "Excuse me?" "You built a weapon," she continued. "But you never understood the man holding it. He walked away because he could. Because he chose to." Daniel stared at her. "And now," she added, "you're afraid. Not of him, but of what it means if someone like Daniel decides your world isn't worth obeying." Silence slammed into the hallway. The man's smile vanished. "That was a mistake," he said quietly. "No," Daniel said, voice deadly calm. "That was your last warning." The man straightened, smoothing his jacket. "This isn't over." Elara smiled, small, fierce. "It is for me." He studied her one last time, something like respect flickering across his face. Then he turned and walked away. The door closed. Elara's knees gave out. Daniel caught her instantly, arms steady, grounding her before fear could take over. You shouldn't have done that, he said hoarsely. She looked up at him. You shouldn't have loved me if you didn't want me involved. A breath shuddered out of him. You don't understand what you just did, he said. I do, she replied. I told him I see you, and I'm not afraid of what you were. He cupped her face, forehead resting against hers, not kissing, not claiming, just there. That makes you the most dangerous person in my world, he murmured. She closed her eyes. Then stop trying to send me away from it. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. Okay, he said. Then we do this differently. How? She asked. Together, he replied. With rules, with light, with me answering every question you ask, even the ones that break me. Her throat tightened. And if it gets worse? It will, he said honestly. But not like before. She pulled back just enough to meet his gaze. Daniel, she said, if we survive this, I don't want to survive around you. I want a life. Something in him softened completely. You'll have one, he vowed, even if it costs me everything else. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. Chapter 10. Terms of Staying. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of Alara's couch long after midnight, elbows braced on his knees, phone dark in his hand. The city beyond the windows pulsed with life, unaware that entire futures were being dismantled in silence. Alara watched him from the doorway, wrapped in a blanket, heart heavy and strangely calm. You're thinking in lists, she said. He glanced up. I always do. Who to cut, who to warn, who won't forgive you. Yes, she stepped closer. And where do I fit in? He didn't look away. In every calculation. That honesty felt heavier than any lie. Then let's set terms, she said. He stilled. Terms. If I stay, she continued, it's not as your secret or your weakness. It's as your partner. A flicker of something, hope, fear, reverence, passed through his eyes. I don't know how to be that, he said. Learn, she replied, like everyone else. He nodded once. First, she said, no acting on my behalf without telling me. That limits my options. Good. He exhaled. Agreed. Second, she continued, no disappearing. His jaw tightened. If it keeps you safe, then you tell me first, she said. I don't wake up wondering if you're dead. Silence stretched. Agreed, he said quietly. Third, she added, voice steady. No lies. Omissions count? That one hurt. He closed his eyes briefly. Agreed. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. And what do you want? She asked. He studied her for a long moment. I want permission, he said slowly, to choose you without destroying you. Her chest ached. You don't get permission, she said gently. You get responsibility. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. That's worse. Yes, she agreed, but it's honest. He stood, closing the space between them, not touching yet. There are things you don't know, he said, things that will change how you see me. Tell me one, she said. He hesitated. In Prague, he said, I spared a man I shouldn't have. Her brows knit. Why? Because he reminded me of my brother, Daniel said, and because I was tired. The admission cracked something open. That man built the network you're facing now, he continued. He learned from me. Alara's breath caught. So this is your fault? Yes. She didn't flinch. It doesn't mean you have to pay for it alone, she said. His eyes burned. I don't deserve that. No one does, she replied. That's the point. The days that followed were tense but strangely intimate. Daniel dismantled pieces of his empire with surgical precision, selling assets, severing contracts, exposing operations just enough to burn bridges without collapsing the structure entirely. Alara watched it happen from the inside. Men and women came and went, some furious, some frightened, some respectful enough to say goodbye. She learned names, faces, the shape of the world Daniel had once ruled, and slowly she stopped feeling like prey. One night, as rain streaked the windows, Daniel handed her a thin folder. "What's this?" she asked. "Everything," he said. "The last of it." She opened it. Photos, reports, timelines. A life soaked in shadow. She looked up. "Why give me this?" "So you can walk away," he said, "with your eyes open." She closed the folder. "I'm still here," she said. His breath hitched. "You don't know what that costs me," he whispered. She reached out then, finally, and took his hand. "You don't know what it gives you," she replied. The knock came an hour later. Not the same man, not the same threat. This one was quieter, smarter. Daniel stiffened. "This is it," he said. "The last severing." Alara squeezed his hand. "Then don't do it alone." He looked at her, really looked, and nodded. Together, they moved toward the door. Chapter 11. The Line That Bleeds. The man waiting on the other side of the door didn't knock again. He knew Daniel was listening. Daniel opened it without hesitation. The visitor was younger than the last, mid-30s, sharp-eyed, impeccably dressed in a way that suggested money earned violently rather than inherited. His gaze flicked once to Alara, then back to Daniel with something close to satisfaction. "Hail," he said. "You look domestic." Daniel didn't rise to it. "You shouldn't be here." "And yet," the man replied, stepping inside without invitation, "here I am." Alara felt the air shift. This wasn't intimidation by volume. This was surgical. "I represent what remains," the man continued. "The people who cleaned up your mess when you decided to grow a conscience." "I didn't ask them to," Daniel said. "No," the man agreed. "You abandoned them." Alara spoke before Daniel could stop her. "You're not here to negotiate." The man smiled at her. "Smart. No, I'm here to collect." "From me," Daniel said flatly. "From you," the man corrected, eyes sliding back to Alara, "would be inefficient." Daniel moved instantly, placing himself between them. "Say it," Daniel said. "Whatever you came to say." The man tilted his head. "One last job." Alara's heart dropped. "No," Daniel replied without hesitation. "Then she dies," the man said calmly. "Not today, not dramatically. Something quiet, accidental." The words settled like poison. Alara felt Daniel's hand tremble. "That won't work," Daniel said. "You touch her, and I will dismantle every remaining cell you have." The man laughed softly. "You already tried that. You ran out of leverage when you chose love." Daniel went very still. Alara stepped forward, despite the danger humming in the room. "You don't want him," she said. "You want proof." The man raised a brow. "Of what?" "That he still belongs to you," she said. "That he hasn't changed." Daniel turned sharply. "Alara? She's right," the man said, eyes bright with interest. "So here's the offer." He leaned in just enough for the words to feel intimate. "Kill me," the man said. "Right now. End this problem the way you always have. Prove to everyone watching that Daniel Hale hasn't gone soft." Silence exploded. Alara stared at Daniel. She saw it then, the line, the one he'd crossed before without hesitation, the one he'd sworn he wouldn't again, and she knew something worse than fear. If he crossed it now, he would lose himself forever. "If you don't," the man continued smoothly, "I walk away. And eventually, she doesn't." Daniel's breath came slow, controlled, terrified. "Alara," he said quietly without turning. "You need to leave." No, she replied, voice shaking but firm. Not like this. The man smiled. Choose. Time fractured. Daniel saw it all at once. Prague, blood on his hands, faces that never faded, the hollow victories, the endless night. And then he saw Alara, standing, choosing him even now. He lowered his hand. No, Daniel said. The word rang through the room like a gunshot. The man's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. Yes, Daniel agreed, but it's mine. The man stepped back. Then she's already dead. Before Daniel could move, Alara reached into her pocket and held up her phone. You're wrong, she said. The man frowned. What is that supposed to be? Insurance, she replied. Your voice, your offer, your threats, uploaded, time-stamped, sent to 3 independent journalists and 1 federal task force. Daniel stared at her. You thought I was just watching you dismantle your world? She continued. I was building my own leverage. The man's face drained of color. You wouldn't. I already did, she said. Daniel felt something inside him collapse and rebuild. The man backed toward the door. This isn't over. It is for tonight, Alara replied. He fled. The door closed. The silence afterward was devastating. Daniel sank onto a chair, shaking. You were willing to die, he said hoarsely. For me. She knelt in front of him. No, I was willing to live with you. Tears burned his eyes. Unfamiliar, uncontained. I almost crossed it, he whispered. But you didn't, she said. That matters. He pulled her into his arms then. Not possessive, not desperate, grateful. I don't know how to be good, he said. She held him. Then be better than you were yesterday. For the first time in his life, Daniel believed that might be enough. Chapter 12. What Survives the Fire. The fallout was immediate. Phones rang, messages stacked, names surfaced that hadn't dared speak in years. Daniel watched the world he'd built finally realize he was serious about tearing it down. Alara watched him let it burn. They didn't touch for most of the day, not because they didn't want to, but because everything between them felt newly fragile, like a bridge that had survived an earthquake but hadn't yet been tested by weight. By evening, the news broke. Not names, not details, but whispers. An unnamed consultant, international networks, sealed indictments, enough to make powerful people nervous. This will keep you alive, Alara said, scrolling through her phone. For a while, Daniel replied. He looked lighter, not relieved, but no longer suffocating under his own past. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. I did. He met her gaze. You changed the rules. She smiled faintly. You taught me how. That night, Daniel slept for the first time in weeks. Alara didn't. She lay awake listening to his breathing, steady and human, thinking about the man he'd been, and the man he might become. In the early hours, his phone buzzed. He answered without opening his eyes. Yes. A pause. Then his eyes opened. Alara sat up instantly. What is it? An arrest, Daniel said slowly. The one from Prague. Her heart sank. The man you spared. Yes. What does that mean? That he talked, Daniel replied. And so will others. Relief washed through her, followed by something heavier. And you? She asked. He didn't answer right away. They'll come for me next, he said finally. Not as an enemy, as an asset. Alara's chest tightened. You can't go back. I won't, he said, but I may have to stand in front of what I did. She nodded. I'll stand with you. He closed his eyes. I don't deserve that. She leaned in and pressed her forehead to his. Stop deciding that for me. The inquiry was quiet. No cameras, no trials, just rooms with blank walls and people who asked questions that never softened. Daniel answered them all. He gave names, routes, methods. He didn't excuse himself. Alara waited in hallways that smelled like antiseptic and fear, hands clasped tightly in her lap. When he finally emerged, he looked older, but freer. "They're offering immunity," he said. "Conditional." Her heart raced. At what cost? "Everything I was," he said, "and everything I could have been in that world." She smiled softly. "Sounds like a bargain." He huffed out a weak laugh. "You're terrible at this." "I know." Months passed. Daniel moved into a smaller apartment, anonymous, quiet. He learned how to cook badly and laugh more often than he expected. Alara quit the cafe, went back to school, built a future that didn't revolve around survival. They argued, a lot, about trust, about control, about the weight of what couldn't be erased, but they stayed. One evening, as the sun sank low over the city, Daniel stood beside her on the balcony. "They'll never forget who I was," he said. She took his hand. "No, but they'll learn who you chose to become." He turned to her, eyes steady, no longer haunted. "I will never be safe," he said. She smiled. "Neither is loving you." He pulled her close, not to hide her, just to hold her, and for the first time the darkness around them felt survivable. Chapter 13. The shape of after healing did not arrive like forgiveness. It arrived like routine. Daniel learned the weight of ordinary days, the kind where no one hunted him, no one needed saving, and no decision carried the consequence of blood. He learned that silence could be peaceful instead of predatory, that nights could end without calculation. It unsettled him. Alara noticed first. "You pace when you're bored," she said one morning, watching him move restlessly around the kitchen. "You never used to get bored." "I used to get needed," he replied. "That's not the same thing." "No," he agreed. "It was easier." She reached out, took his hand and guided him back to the table. "Easy isn't the goal anymore." He let her. Some days were good. They laughed in grocery stores, burned dinners, argued about music and money and whether curtains mattered. He listened, really listened, when she spoke about school, about the future she was building brick by brick. Other days were harder. Daniel woke from nightmares with his heart racing, the echo of old rooms still clinging to his skin. He flinched at sudden sounds. He watched strangers too closely. Alara didn't try to fix him. She stayed. "You don't scare me," she told him one night when his hands wouldn't stop shaking. "But I won't pretend you don't scare yourself." He swallowed. "I don't know how to be normal." She smiled sadly. "Neither do I. We'll improvise." The letter came in spring. No return address, no threat, just an invitation. Testimony requested. Daniel stared at it for a long time before handing it to her. "This could undo everything," he said. Alara read it, then folded the paper carefully. "Or it could finish it." He exhaled slowly. "If I go back into that world—" "You won't go back," she interrupted. "You'll walk through it." He studied her. "You're not afraid?" "I am," she admitted, "but I'm more afraid of you carrying this forever." The hearing was brutal. Faces from his past watched him without forgiveness, some with hatred, some with relief. Daniel spoke anyway, clearly, completely. He didn't minimize, didn't justify, didn't ask to be understood. When it was over, the room emptied without applause. Alara waited for him in the hallway. When he finally reached her, he looked hollowed out, but lighter than he ever had. "I told them everything," he said. She wrapped her arms around him. "I know." They moved again after that, not because they were forced to, but because they chose a place that didn't know their history, a quieter city, fewer shadows. Daniel took a job consulting, legally this time, teaching corporations how to recognize the kinds of systems he'd once built, how to dismantle them before they rotted from the inside. "You're still managing risk," Alara teased. He smiled. "I just pick better sides now." She graduated in the fall. Daniel sat in the audience, clapping too loudly, eyes bright and unguarded. When she found him afterward, Diploma clutched to her chest. He kissed her with a reverence that made her laugh. "You look like you're going to cry," she said. "I am," he replied. "I'm proud of you." "You didn't make me," she said. "I know," he said. "That's why it matters." One night, months later, they lay tangled together on the couch, rain tapping softly against the windows. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I'd walked away?" Elara asked. Daniel was quiet for a long time. "Yes," he said. "I think I would have survived." She turned to him. "But?" "But I wouldn't have lived," he finished. She smiled faintly. "Good thing I stayed." He traced the line of her jaw, careful, present. "You didn't save me." "I know," she said. "You did the hard part." He kissed her forehead. "You showed me where to start." Daniel Hale would never be innocent. The darkness would always remember him. But love, real love, had not demanded that he erase his past, only that he refused to repeat it. And Elara Moore did not belong to his shadow. She stood beside him in the light, not untouched by the dark, but unafraid to hope anyway. Chapter 14. The Things That Come Back. The call came on a Tuesday. Ordinary days were always the most dangerous. Daniel had learned that the hard way. He was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, trying, and failing, to fix a cabinet hinge when his phone vibrated against the counter. Unknown number. Private line. He stared at it longer than necessary. Elara noticed immediately. "You don't ignore calls like that," she said. "No," he replied. "I don't." He answered. "Yes." A voice spoke, calm, familiar in the way nightmares were familiar. Daniel's hand tightened on the phone. "I told you not to contact me," he said. Elara's stomach dropped. She didn't hear the voice, but she saw the change in him, the way his shoulders went rigid, the way his eyes went distant, calculating. "I understand," Daniel continued. "That doesn't change my answer." A pause. Then, "No." Another pause. Longer, his jaw clenched. "If you come near her, you won't walk away."